Now, we move to the keynote conversation of the event with Lakshmi Pratury and Nivruti Rai. Lakshmi Pratury is an entrepreneur, curator, and speaker, the founder of INK, and has previously spent time in various technology and venture capital roles at Intel, Global Innovation Catalyst. She was also included in Forbes' list of women to watch in Asia. She is deeply curious about technology and works a lot with women and the role that they can play in changing our society. Nivruti Rai is the country head Intel India and VP GM Automotive Solutions Group, IFS at Intel Corporation, and is passionate about the technology ecosystem and how we can usher into the next revolution for India and for the world. This conversation will focus on building a culture of scientific temperament and fostering innovation and creativity in young minds. May I now request Lakshmi Pratury and Nivruti Rai to take the center stage. Over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, Nivruti. It's wonderful to have a chat with you today, and really, it's an honor to celebrate Joy Thomas, and have this conversation. Welcome, Nivruti.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. It's always a delight to talk to you. You encouraged me. I remember the first conversation we had. From then to now, every time, I talk to you, I go back more motivated, more inspired, and ready to do more, honestly.
Yeah. And so what I thought today is, Nivruti and I will just have a conversation about both our careers. And it's interesting, Nivruti started at Intel 28 years ago, and I started 34 years ago or something. And we had and I'm from IIT Bombay, she's from University of Lucknow. We both have tech backgrounds, and we both joined Intel, and she stuck it out, and over the years done some amazing things at Intel. Now, two different things, Nivruti. One is, you're leading the country, and the other one is you have a global role of leading, being a general manager. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I was at Intel for 12 years. Since then, I've been a venture capitalist and philanthropy and my own company and curator, collector of people. We had very different paths, but we're at the same place. We both are neighbors in Bangalore, and we both are now very, very dedicated to building bridges between India and the rest of the world. So it's wonderful how you could take different paths, but you could end up at the same place. So we'll cover that in this conversation. So Nivruti, I thought, I just have to say one thing. I was recently at an event, and someone from Lucknow was there, and he was doing shairis. And then he was saying that, when you're in high school in most of the world, you have model UN or debating, but in Lucknow, we have love. So I think you come with a lot of love and humanity and poetry. And I know in your case, fashion, lots of things other than technology, but you chose technology. So, and I was in IIT Bombay, and you're in the University of Lucknow. And my journey was accidental. I just wanted to go to Bombay, and I thought it's a good reason to go write an entrance exam. And that's how I ended up in IIT Bombay. And wanted to know a little bit about your career in STEM, Nivruti. How did you end up there? Did you always know you wanted to be there, or just tell us a little bit about how did you choose to be in technology?
Sure, Lakshmi. Let me start with saying something that my kudos to every one of you, who have been through the graduation of IIT, because in my heart, I think there's no institution like IIT. So kudos to all of you. Very, very proud of the winners, very proud of each one of you. I must tell you that I did not get through IIT. And so I feel, an honor to be amongst all of you. Great job to all of you. I'm sure you made your parents proud, you made your families proud. So, kudos to all of you. My journey, like Lakshmi says, I have lots of likes in my life. I love to sing, I love to dance, I love to sew, I love to embroider. I have that creative side of my mind very active. But I realized that, my father always wanted to make me, be an engineer. I was his third daughter. So he basically took it upon himself that, so what if I have daughters? My daughter can be an engineer, can be as effective. So he really, guided me to go towards STEM, because he thought that's one area where, some logical thinking, critical thinking comes naturally. And I realized that through my early years of STEM, how you start with an hypothesis, you drive experiments, you collect observation. I'm suddenly remembering, my notebooks, my practicals, observations, and then observations-based conclusions. I honestly realized that that was so helpful. I mean, people don't think that that's so important, but actually that changed the way I look at problems, whether it is problems at home or anywhere else. So logical thinking and critical thinking comes naturally to people who are in STEM. Now, I'm not saying that people who don't do STEM don't have it, but it just encourages, all of this kind of thing. And I often say common sense is not that common. And my STEM education actually led me to think more in terms of common sense. And lastly, what I would say is, how Aristotle would say, logos, pathos, and ethos. I really think STEM kind of encouraged me with logical thinking, if this, then that kind of a thing. Then, if you think of ethos, when you know your stuff, when you can, solve an equation, it's not like English or history, where English is, left for interpretation. When you look at math, it's the proof that you see. That gives you confidence that I have done it right. So ethos comes naturally. The only thing that I feel STEM people have to really work hard on is pathos. Make sure, the EQ part is also important. And I've seen when there is a conflict at the front door. When there is a confluence of IQ, all the logical thinking, critical thinking, and knowledge comes together with EQ, success is bound to happen. So, that's what I have learned. And being a woman actually helps me a lot, because a lot of nurturing and caring comes naturally to me. So the EQ part, I don't have to work very hard. But I've seen that people who are very logical in thinking can sometimes become very dry and very, very, very crisp. And sometimes you need a little bit softness around the crispness. So for me, being a woman helps, but that's something that I would like to say. But I've loved my journey. Intel, like Lakshmi, is like a conglomerate of companies, and I've traveled all through and have enjoyed my journey.
Yeah. And I think you rightly said, Nivruti, in terms of, I think we all need balance in our lives. And I think the STEM education earlier years at least gives you that background, that foundation upon which you can build. It doesn't mean you have to just stay there. I mean, there are musicians, there are writers, there are, all sorts of people that come out of STEM education. So I also really feel that even though it was my, entry into IIT was accidental, and my journey was, much different than yours. I didn't stay in tech. I went to many other fields. I feel the background, the basis it gives is incredibly, incredibly good. And I also want to talk a little bit about, STEM in the education system, because, what saddens me a lot of times is when people say that, oh, I'm just not good in math, especially women accept that they're not good in math. There's nothing like, I don't believe there's anybody who's bad at math. It's either you're taught well or you're not taught well. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's sort of solving a puzzle, and it makes you curious how to do it. And I'm glad you talked about the notebooks, etc. It's sort of, you say, the whole equation that comes from the beginning to end of where you start to where you solve is how it develops a certain mind. So, and Intel has done a lot of work for STEM in education, especially in India. Under your leadership, you've done lots of things in putting AI in the curriculum and stuff. So tell us a little bit about the role of STEM in education process and how it can help a mind to grow.
A very, very good question. So, like many of you, I'm a very proud Indian, and I feel that every one of us who has reached a certain stage in life, I feel it's a give back time for me. I have learned from society people. So in my give back time, I'm really focusing hard to enable education like AI to the children, let's say from between 8th through 12th. And I've also looked at, how do I enable college students, university students with more experimental capability and more technology capability. So we've trained about 300,000 kids, 8th through 12th across India, in villages and in cities. Why is technology important? Technology is immensely important because over the last few years during COVID, if we didn't have connectivity, if we didn't have the capability to do online education, a lot of children would have suffered. Anyway, the ones who did not have access to connectivity, which is a very large number, a lot of children suffered. So I feel the technology, which is absolutely essential, is connectivity. Connectivity, like, roads of old time. So I really feel that whether it is education, whether it is health, whether it is, economics, connectivity is very, very key, whether it is 2G, 3G, 5G, Wi-Fi, you name it, broadband kind of capability. Mm-hmm. But I am really focused on how do I connect 600,000 villages of India with broadband.
Yeah. No, it's been a very, very interesting initiative to watch. Way back when, even in 2001, when I started going to India to put computers in really poor schools connected to internet, Intel was very active in teacher training, etc. So we partnered with Intel at that time. So Intel has been dedicated to education and educating the children for a long time now. Talking about technologies, Nivruti, what are the technologies you think are going to be relevant 5-10 years from now? One of the things I still remember very vividly, us talking about, way back when at Intel, is that we shouldn't train our kids for jobs that are available today. We need to train our kids for jobs that are available 5 to 10 years from now. And recently I was talking to someone and they said, we were talking about crypto and all that. And they said, this is the first digital currency for the digitally native generation. There'll be lots of ups and downs, etc. But this is the first time a fully digital currency for a fully digital generation. So things like this are going to be mainstream in the future with a little bit of ups and downs. And you remember way back when you started at Intel, we were just getting into internet and people didn't understand what it was, how it's relevant, etc. And now we can't live without it. So lots of things are going to happen. Which are the technologies you think are going to be really radically developing in the next 5 to 10 years? So our children now, when they're studying, what are the things they should pursue, they should study? So what do you think?
Sure. So, you would have expected that I will definitely say AI because, the world, everybody talks about digitalization. What does digitalization mean? It means, taking information and storing it into digital systems. So you have a lot of data. When you have a lot of data, what comes to your mind? How do I create value out of data? And just 3 things happen, which is, you have to create value out of data, which means a lot of processing. you have to transfer data, which means connectivity, and you have to store data, so there is storage. So you have to look at all three basically processes that need to happen. You need to be able to compute a lot of value. So a lot of computational technologies, whether it is, the non human kind of computers with machine learning, with brain inspired learning. So a lot of compute, quantum will come into being. If speed will be so important that the download or upload speed will be instant with quantum like technologies. Then storage, we're already talking about, how can we store several hundred terabytes of information, whether it is cloud, whether it is edge. So storage will involve a lot of that. Connectivity, like I said, today we are working on 5G, tomorrow, who knows, it will be, some new revolutionary technologies of connectivity. So all these will be important. And then data will be flowing in the air, which means, you have to look at security and safety. Today we talk about, blockchain, but, it came out of Bitcoin, and blockchain became a bigger technology than, the currency itself. But a lot of, safety, security kind of technologies. Now, I kind of broadly said AI, but AI is going to enable automotives. AI is going to enable health. Surgeries happening from Sloan Kettering in Mysuru. So a lot of those kind of things will happen when the technologies converge. There will be robotics, there will be robotic surgery, but it can happen remotely with connectivity. Speed of connectivity, security. So I really believe all the technologies around data is going to be really, really important.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, maybe I will let you.
No, go ahead.
The other two things I feel is, climate. We've seen global warming. So what do we do? And I know AI can help there as well. So those are the kind of things, Lakshmi, that come to my mind.
Yeah, and also the other thing I know you're doing a lot of, and everybody is doing, is to make sure the AI data sets are representative, because one of the things so far in the AI data sets has been that, it's been predominantly the Western or a certain ethnic group, etc. So I think I've seen a lot of work that you're doing also in the area to make sure it's socially responsible, that all the, races, all the gender differences, everything is involved in the data based on which we are making decisions. So I just want to say, as you were saying earlier, the technology side and the social side, are equally important to make sure that we have a responsible AI. And the last thing I want to wrap up with, we have just a couple of minutes, Nivruti, is how do we make sure more women are in STEM, and we make sure, again, representative data sets, right? So we need to have just as many women, in fact, all sorts of diversity. So just a couple of thoughts from you on how do we make sure more women are in STEM?
See, I think more of us as role models need to step out. I'll tell you, expectation from me was when I joined Intel, a lot of people would look at me and say, oh, she couldn't be an engineer, at best should be a human resources person. So there is certain, assumptions that people walk in with, or, if this is a woman, she cannot be strong in math. Look at the amazing IIT women we have in this panel. So a lot of us have to come out with our story, and our story needs to have successes and failures called out equally. Not everybody is going to win all the time, but don't give up with one failure. I really, really love Abraham Lincoln, who said, I always failed upwards. A lot of us are shy that, one failure or one bad idea means, we are not good at it. We fall into that category. So I think a lot of role modeling, a lot of corporate needs to support what the requirement for women are. Once the children are born, don't give us boring work. We are anyway leaving our child at home and coming to work. You give me the boring work. It's like a double whammy for me. So I think corporates have to take some responsibility. Government has to take some responsibility. Each of us who have arrived at a certain stage have some responsibilities. And I also believe it's not just men. Oftentimes, people say, oh, men need to change. We need to change also.
Yeah.
So, the queen bee phenomenon, hold one woman's hand and, help her move forward, show her your failures, guide her through that. I think the onus is on all of us. We are in this world, we are talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0. AI will enable, robotics will enable women to be working in heavy industries. Let's show them, let's be the role models. And I think the onus is on all of us. And I really see the world is changing because I see my daughter, she's living in a different world. And I believe Lakshmi, your and my daughter and everybody's, young children will not see the world we are because we are fighting for them.
Yes. So I want to wrap up by saying that, Nivruti, there are two things you said I really want to highlight. One is we talked about your father. I think both of us had very strong fathers who supported, I didn't know that men and women were different, that we could aspire things differently. I just didn't even know that growing up. And secondly, the most important thing you said, I want to wrap up by saying, is that telling our story is extremely important. For the last decade, I think we have been dedicated to telling stories. It's not just to yourself, to the world. Telling your story, especially as a woman, is extremely important so others can see the role modeling. And finally, is to make yourself important. I think women put their hand up to save the world, to save the family, even before anybody asks. So my request to all the women is that it's okay to put yourself first and see what is your career, because then the whole ecosystem falls around to support you. But if you yourself don't ask, nothing comes to you. So I'm so delighted. It's always a great great time talking to my friend Nivruti, who I admire a lot, and everyone else who's been on this panel and who's going to be coming pretty soon. And real thank you to people like Joy Thomas, who have been always fair and equal and diverse and giving voices to everybody, etc. So let's all go into a world where there is equality and diversity, and technology definitely will bring us all together. Thank you very much for all your time.
Lakshmi, let me just share one thing with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Hanuman Jayanti, and a phrase comes to my mind, which is true for everyone. One of the phrases in Hanuman Chalisa is "Apan tej samharo ape, tino log haakte kape." You have the energy to shake the three worlds. All you have to do is just go access. So, strength to all of us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nivruti. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thank you.